Vessel of fortune for the Lord Jesus Christ, sailing the seas of culture, a real heist. Come along for a view that's unique and so true. An adventure with Rick, the Privateer's Crew.
Hello and welcome to all of my Levitical Kingdom privateers out there. My name is Rick Hidalgo. I'm the host of this Privateer Volley, and today we're talking about airships, we're talking about bells, we're talking about mental hospitals, and we're going to somehow combine it all together to come up with a common theme, and that common theme has to do with just investigating history. Are we being told the truth about history? Do we even know real history, or has somebody or something reverse engineered history so that we wouldn't know where we are in the timeline in order to deceive us into thinking that, it all makes sense. We must still be waiting for this, or we must still be waiting for that. What exactly is going on? And the best way for me to explore that is to continue the investigation that I've been doing on things of the old world, because there are a lot of things in the old world that I'm extremely excited about researching. And I do see that there's people jumping into the chat. Hello, Tabitha. Hello, Stone's Throw Acres. Glad to see you here. Robert. Hello, Robert. And Plane Flyer. Ahoy, matey. So we're going to explore some of these things today to look at them and to give it a critical eye and find out, what actually was going on. Not that we probably can find out what actually was going on, because I think that a lot of these narratives in history are designed to keep us in the dark, but to keep those who are among the elite. That's what they call themselves. I don't call them that. They call themselves that. In a place of having a feeding frenzy. The whole system is designed for the elite to rule. It is the deception of the devil. And so where I want to start today, so I want to talk a little bit about airships. So the question that I want to kind of ponder, as I was investigating this, I'm finding a lot of really interesting information. In fact, I have to tell you that, yes, I am one of those people that am addicted to watching Candace Owens going through this entire thing of investigating the Charlie Kirk sacrifice, not assassination, sacrifice. I'm fascinated. I'm not really a huge fan of her Christianity worldview. I think she's young in the faith, doesn't really understand, and her conversion to Catholicism doesn't help. But at the end of the day, I think I appreciate her exploration of these things, and I do like when she brings up material that actually lends to the things that I'm investigating. And yesterday she did just exactly that thing, which is I thought was really weird. I was like, so you just mentioned the name that literally comes up in my airship investigation. So I went and looked it up and did some study, and I'll tell you what I found. But I want to address this question. What would the world be like today if the Hindenburg had not caught on fire? Would airships be more of a thing? Or did it lose its momentum? Did it lose its ground of being actually a great way to get around? At the time, did it lose its ground to planes? and the ability for planes to go further. In fact, at the time, there was a great transatlantic war going on. I don't want to say not a kinetic war, although a kinetic war had just been fought. The First World War was coming to a halt, and suddenly the airship industry kind of took off. Not that there weren't airships before, because there were, but that's when it kind of just took off, no pun intended. And what I'm finding is that there were characters involved in the investment of airships, because as you can imagine, airships are not a cheap thing to build, that that line up with bloodline families that go back to Canaanite worship and Baal worship and all kinds of things. So this is where I want to start. I want to introduce you to a fellow. This guy, come on, get up there. There you go. Thank you, StreamYard, for actually doing what I'm asking you to do. This guy, Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin. You might recognize the name Zeppelin because Zeppelin becomes the name of the primary brand of airships. Zeppelin himself, this guy that you see on your screen right now, is the guy who kind of made the primary investment, if you will, into the airship industry, created a company. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. It's got a lot of the outlaws on it, and I don't know how to pronounce those. I think in German there's a lot of and I'm just not. I'm not German. I can't do that. So, and yes, Robert, she is blinded by false Catholicism. No question about it. In fact, I will address that real quick before I go on. Candace Owens, I'm talking about specifically. She was part of a prayer event that all of the bad actors out there were coming against. And I'm not against prayer in any way, shape, or form, but this was a Catholic prayer event, and her entire prayer was centered on the fact that she had previously had a problem with Mary worship until a priest convinced her that it was okay to, well, essentially worship Mary. So yeah, I have a problem with her Catholicism. I'm not a big fan of it whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. But let's get back to the airships. This guy, Count Ferdinand, as you would expect, that title Count tells you among whom he was rolling with. But this guy is an aristocrat. He's a gentleman who belongs to Prussian bloodline families, and he invests heavily into airships. Now, the story, the official narrative, I have to tell you this because this is just amazing to me. In 1863, just so happened to be 1863, the Prussian/Germanic government gave him a assignment to come to America. Of course, that was exactly the year that the Civil War kicked off, 1863, which I find fascinating that they would use that year as the narrative. He goes to see Abraham Lincoln. Yes, he's actually shaking hands. He's with the shakers of society. He goes in. He goes to Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln gives him some kind of an endorsement. So this guy had nothing to do with the Civil War. While the Civil War is going on, he's out exploring the western end of the United States. What isn't actually the United States yet, but is territories. Okay, so he's out there exploring, and this is where, conveniently in the narrative, in the United States, for the first time, he sees a balloon. and he's fascinated by this balloon. He says, I'm going to go back to Germany and I'm going to invest in those and we're going to make them and we're going to take people across the Atlantic Ocean. That was his dream, supposedly, according to the narrative. So, so this guy goes back to Germany. They invest in balloons. At the time, they're not filling them with helium. I have a very erratic set of notes here, so forgive me. I have to go way back into the beginning of my study here to even remember what kind of gas they were using at the time. I believe they were using, or Abraham Lincoln, anyway, his Northern Army was using some kind of a swamp gas, according to the narrative. So, interesting stuff. Let me get out of my notes so I can go back and see what I'm talking about here. Filled in with hydrogen at the time. Yes, there was this guy, Court Ferdinand. That is exactly what he did. When they went back to Germany, they started to fill them with hydrogen, which was actually a resource that they had in Prussia, Germanic territories at the time. So this is what he did. So he engaged in a business and he started a commercial enterprise that he named, amazingly, after himself, Zeppelin. And this fellow, he passed away somewhere in the 1917 to 1920 type of area. He handed off his enterprise to a guy named Dr. Hugo Eckner, who became the pilot and became the sole proprietor of this business, along with his daughter, who took over the estate. Now, as is always amazing with the elite, his daughter married a gentleman of consequence, and the gentleman that his daughter married, his last name is Graf. Now, if you don't know, that name Graf is associated with a lot of things. I'm going to show you in a minute how Graf, the Graf balloon, was the sister balloon to the Hindenburg. And the Graf balloon, this Graf family would later come to America and be part of what's called the Mormon Mafia, which plays into another character who the Mormon Mafia became kind of the workers for, and that's Howard Hughes. Now, if you've never heard of Howard Hughes, there's a lot of documentaries that have been made about him. In fact, the movie The Aviator is supposedly about Howard Hughes. He's another rich cat, a mogul in the aviator and movie making worlds. Now, the funny thing is, this Howard Hughes, when he gets done building airplanes, and by the way, Lockheed is related to Howard Hughes. And so when he gets done building his airplanes and making all of his money, the narrative says that he becomes a recluse. He goes to Las Vegas and starts buying up the strip. Piece by piece, he buys up Las Vegas. And that he goes in, he has some kind of a OCD condition where he can't stand being around people anymore, and he's doesn't want sunlight. He keeps the sunlight out of his room, and he just never again visits anybody except for these trusted people that he brings into his life that affectionately are called the Mormon Mafia. And this Mormon Mafia, the they work like just like any other mafia. They're bought and paid for. And part of that Mormon mafia was that it was connected to the courts of Nevada. Of course they were, right? I mean, how could you make it if you weren't? So that name Graff, the family that came to America later after World War II, go figure, from Germany, uh, probably part of Operation Paperclip. I haven't gotten that far. I have no idea. Okay, I'm just telling you what I found so far. That family comes over, and the judge that's related to the Mormon Mafia and Howard Hughes and that whole situation, which was a really weird narrative, by the way. Turns out that judge is named Tony F. Graff. Yeah, I can't make this stuff up. So the airships that were pumped out commercially from the Zeppelin family, the wealth that came from that was converted into a trust and a foundation, and that trust and foundation is still operated today out of Las Vegas. And so many trusts and foundations are operated out of Las Vegas. But let me show you this next thing here. I got to switch the tabs. Here we go. So this is the LZ-130 Graf Zeppelin. This is the sister, as it says here, built from essentially the same blueprints as her sister, the ship LZ-129 Hindenburg. LZ-130 was nearing completion, here's the narrative, at the time of the Hindenburg disaster on May the 6th, 1937. Originally intended to join the Hindenburg in transatlantic service in October of 1937. So it was then modified to a helium balloon after the Hindenburg crash, because they began to modify them. But at that time, they lost the war. That Hindenburg crash changed everything. Airships were no longer desirable because they were thought to be extremely dangerous and flammable. Although there have been far more plane disasters than there ever was airship disasters. And you can fit a lot of planes inside of one of these airships. Of course, when they converted the helium doesn't have the lift that the previous gas had, so they couldn't do as many passengers or cargo after that. So I go back to my question: what would the world be like if the Hindenburg had not caught on fire? Which makes me suspicious about the narrative of the Hindenburg, and it makes me question if that wasn't a planned event. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. Interesting stuff. I've got one more little piece to share about the airships. I don't know their sound on this. For some reason, the sound is not working on my side for this. Maybe it will on yours. I don't know. I don't think it's working, the sound. But what you're seeing here is a couple that is talking about the Eiffel Tower and how it was. The narrative is that it was originally made for one of the world fairs, one of the big world fairs in Paris, right about that same time, by the way, early 1900s, and that the Eiffel Tower is actually a mooring bay for airships, and they're showing actual pictures that came from that time period where they're actually mooring the ship, or if you want to use like sea ship terms, they're docking the ship to the Eiffel Tower. And so kind of the narrative of the Eiffel Tower begins to to shift and changes the whole idea of what airships may have been. I mean, if you look at the what's going on right there on your screen, I mean, this is crazy stuff. I mean, these things were elegant. They were huge. They carried a lot of people, um, far more people than a conventional airplane could carry at the time. But these things were so elegant. They had kitchens. They had, you know, like the whole thing. It was like a floating hotel. So, and they're also showing pictures of the Hindenburg fire. Coincidentally, there at the same time. So just stuff to think about. To question the narrative a little bit, and also the narrative of how far it goes back, because, um, like I said, the official narrative is that Zeppelin, who's kind of seen as one of the original founders of the commercial aspect of airships, first learned of quote unquote balloons when he visited Lincoln in the United States in 1863. So I don't know, weird stuff, a lot of connections to today's elite, yesterday's elite. Nothing really ever changed hands. All they did was just convert from airships to planes, and the same elites own it all anyway. So that's the airship part of the discussion. Let me go back here to the StreamYard. All right, so what do we got here? Let's go back to the chat real quick. So I see it too. My gut feeling is that the Hindenburg was definitely a planned disaster. That's my gut too. I don't know. I don't know what difference it really would have made, but it did have a lot of momentum going for it. They were about to do some massive transatlantic travel with these things. They were going to, produce them in mass, and that kind of all went out the window when the Hindenburg went down. So I'm not sure. Air privateers, yeah, I like that. Plane flyer, air privateers. And I can imagine it would be tough to see on a phone. Sorry about that. So I want to go into the next piece that I was studying. I promised to bring forth some stuff about bells. You're going to love this. You are. You're going to love this, because bells are one of the most misrepresented things in the world. Let me see. Let me get rid of a couple of these things so I can get to where I want to go. Show this tab instead, and let's pop this up. So this, what you're seeing now, is an old book. How old? Well, it's pretty old. I did not catch what year it was published. I don't want to go back that far because I want to read something to you. These people, their narrative is always that we are stupid, and that we've been stupid for millennia, and that people have never been smart, and that somehow we're getting smarter, although we can't build things that we used to be able to build. But this is the narrative that these people have. This is the this is the nerve that they have. Okay, so they're talking about the bells of primitive peoples. In the early ages of the human race, when primitive man first evoked a vibrant sound from a stone. I mean, I'm shaking my head, okay? It must have seemed to him like the voice of his God, speaking the mysterious language of Mother Earth. For was not stone a part of the sacred underworld? Was not the tree also attached to Mother Earth in a mysterious way? And would not the peculiar sound of hard wood when struck seem to have some hidden power attached to it? They think we're idiots, guys. They think that we are absolute buffoons. We're reading this, and we're supposed to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were carrying fire. I remember those days when we were carrying fire and all we could do was say, ooh, 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 ooh. The strangeness of these sounds led primitive man to invest them with a sacred character. To his thinking, everything which he could not understand was something to be worshipped. Yeah. I'm like thinking of the garden narrative, all the way back at the very beginning when we were made in his image. And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. God, that's what God taught us. God taught us to be stupid. And every time we knocked on wood, we were like, oh, let's worship that. Dumb narrative. To his thinking, everything which he could not understand was something to be worshipped, and the sound of stricken metal. Really? Metal? How primitive are we talking here? And hollow wood must have conveyed to him much that was supernatural. His gods spoke to him in the crash of thunder and in all vibrant and mysterious sounds. It was probably a great revelation to him when he realized that he too could make mysterious sounds by using those things which the gods had given him for special communication with them. How about like walking and talking with God in the garden? Did this guy not read the Bible at all? In the first bell, whatever may have been its shape or tone, was probably fashioned as a means by which man could make his gods hear him. I mean, really? How about, hey, how about this? God made us from the dust of the earth. He breathed life into us, and then we walked and talked with him in the garden. We didn't need trees and metal to bang against to say, oh my gosh, isn't that spiritual? We just didn't need that stuff. So. Yeah, crazy. Totally crazy. Sorry about the dog again. You know what's amazing to me? When you tell your family, you're like, hey, I'm going to stream between this time and that time. That's the time they always choose to walk down the hallway adjacent to the door. That's the time they always choose to chip away at the ice in the freezer and make the dog bark. I mean, I don't know. It's just me. It's just me. So, getting back to the bells. What in the world were bells used for? I mean, especially what I'm interested in is like in the dark ages, using the old quotes here, dark ages. That time and that season that was approximately 1,000 years, and that was like anyway. Sorry about that. I'm getting distracted now by the noise. So, that time period that was like about 1,000 years, and in that 1,000 years, peace, nothing ever advanced. In fact, it was absolutely terrible. It was like nothing good happened. No Renaissance, no Baroque period. It's just all just absolute, tribal wars and hell on earth. Right, that period of time. What were bells used for? So I started to do a little bit of study on that, and lo and behold, you can't find anything earlier than the 1800s, 1700s. Before that, no research on bells were done. There's just nothing out there. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it because there are mythologies about bells. And just like Homer and the Iliad, when you read that mythology and realize that some of the gods that they were talking about there may have been the very same giants or Nephilim, that there could have been some tie-in, some relation to the hybrids and the things that we read about in the book of Enoch and the things that we read about in the book of Jasher, the mixing of animals and all those type of things. When you start to realize that like there's some reality to the mythology, you go, okay, there's mythology to bells. Yeah, tell me about it. What's the mythology to bells? Well, it can keep away evil spirits. Oh, it's an interesting mythology. It's almost like you have some kind of a harmonious tone, like a frequency that when you ring that frequency, it messes somehow with the ether in such a way that that dimensional spirit or whatever isn't able to, manifest or do its evil work. Okay, I mean, theory, sure, mythology, okay, but interesting, totally interesting. So, there's actually stories about people who tuned bells to a particular frequency. I'm using that narrative myself in my little TV series that I'm developing. And I took that straight off of the mythology of bells. There's actually a mythology of bells that says that you can tune it like a harp, like you would a harp. And what do we learn about a harp in the scripture as far as how God enabled David to use it with Saul? Could it be that a bell could do the very same things, the very same type of things? I think it's very probable that they can, and it's worth exploring. But don't use Google. Don't try using Valerie, because Valerie failed tremendously on this. I just about fired Valerie. My my researcher, Valerie. Valerie just about got fired. My assistant AI just came this close to being fired because couldn't find anything on bells. I mean, like literally nothing. Just scraped the internet. Nothing there before like 1700, except for mythologies. So there's your bell narrative. I hope you're as interested as I am with that. But here, this last one, I'm about to take you on a journey that you are going to be absolutely amazed by. I think. We're going to talk about mental hospitals. Now check this out. So I found out that the earliest known mental hospital was in the, hold on a second, let me get the date exactly right here. 1247. 1247. Literally right in the middle, well, yeah, pretty close to the middle of the Dark Ages. 1247. So how they know this, first of all, is amazing to me. Second of all, how they know it was used is amazing to me. So the narrative that it was a mental hospital, I'm a little bit suspicious. And I'm going to tell you why I'm a little bit suspicious. Because they left behind some remnants. And the remnants are amazing. I mean, I can't even tell you what this invoked for me. I'm going to show you a picture. But first, I'm going to tell you the story of the picture. And where's my notes here? Okay, you know what? Let me show you this picture first before I get into my notes. I'm bringing it up. It takes me a minute here. Okay. So this is a picture. Um, where am I at? I'm over here. Let's see if I can make this any bigger. Can I make it bigger? I don't know if it gives me any chance to make this bigger. But this is a map of what the plans were for this mental facility. This is a picture of basically a little castle complex over here in the middle right, and all kinds of little courtyards and buildings all around the property. Looks more like a monastery, like a traditional monastery would, or looks more like a community to me than it does anything close to a mental facility. And why would you need so much mental facility? Were there that many people in the 1200s that were like out of their minds? Especially if you buy into the narrative that I buy. If I'm looking at that time period as possibly being the millennial kingdom, I'm going, wait a minute. Isn't the devil like locked up in chains? Is he not? I mean, are we not living in a time of little influence of evil? I'm not saying that there wasn't any. I'm sure there was rebuke and repercussion, and I know that the one of the things that we've learned through these hagiographies that we've been learning about is that there were many travels to places that were conceived as holy cities, and that the resurrected saints were traveling and basically setting up infrastructure all around the world. That's what I believe we see with all of these beautiful, huge, monolithic buildings that we can't even build today, and the remnants of them. This looks like a community to me. But let me show you something better. I don't know if you can see it because it is small. Yeah, I don't know. I can't make it bigger. But there's a West Gate way to the left on the screen, and there's a Bethlehem Gate. Isn't that interesting? Bethlehem, England. Interesting narrative, right? Think about that for a second. They called it Bethlehem. So this Bethlehem Insane Asylum has a Bethlehem Gate. And do you know what's on the Bethlehem Gate? This is interesting to me. I'm going to show you a picture. There are two characters on the Bethlehem Gate. There is this raving madness, is what they call it, which appears to be a humanoid, distorted, very aggrieved individual chained to a platform. And then on the other side of the gate, there's a melancholy being, which looks very similar to, you ever seen that Michelangelo picture where God's finger is coming down and touching man? It's now used as a transhumanism thing. You've seen that picture before? That's on the other side. Now, if you're looking at this, and by the way, do you notice that the person who they say created this statue in 1650 to 1700, somewhere in that area? Because that's the guy that they say chiseled this thing out of stone. So lots of narratives here. I don't know that I really have much faith in the narrative that they're preaching to me here. But at my first look at this picture, I said to myself, if I were in a millennial reign, and if I were going to, coming out of the millennial reign, if I were going to promote the idea that there is this individual who's going to be released, who is currently chained to the bottomless pit. He's chained. Would I represent that at the gate with these two statues? One melancholy that looks very much as you would maybe represent Zeus, very God form. They call it the melancholy statue. I don't have it here. It does say next image. I wonder what it shows. Okay, this is the same dude. This is the same one, the raving madness. I mean, look at the face, the distortion. In absolute horror. That's the back side of it, apparently. Let's see if I can go through here. Is there... He doesn't show the melancholy statue. It just keeps showing this over and over again. Okay, so yeah, and he even appears to be like a slave. He's wearing a band on his arm, as a slave would have. So I just have this theory. I have this theory that this building, this community building, has been repurposed, because today it is an insane asylum. It's much smaller than it was in this picture. But today, there actually is, you can look it up. You can go online. It's called the Bethlehem. They actually have like a museum. Believe it or not. They have a museum. So, and outside of this insane asylum, the next close, the next furthest away is this one in Virginia from 1773. And then there's a ton of them that get built in the 1700s and 1800s. All of a sudden, there is just this massive explosion of people who are out of their mind. Which, need I say, a lot of people who are into the short season concept, their concept is that somewhere around that 1700 time period is when the millennial kingdom would have officially ended. And now suddenly there's all these thousands of insane asylums everywhere. Who could they have considered mad people? Would it be the saints? Would it be the ones who were left over from that time period? I don't know. I'm just theorizing. But I find it interesting. This picture is amazing to me because of the chain. Typically, a slave wouldn't be chained to a foundation. They would wear the band so that people would recognize that they're slaves. They'd send them back to a master. But the chain is excessive. It's almost like it's communicating something that might have been needed to be communicated. Because imagine growing up in a time where generation after generation after generation never had to deal with this person, with this entity called the devil, because he was chained up. Imagine being in a time where your great, 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 great grandfather lived to see the devil chained. And all of those people in between, not a one of them ever experienced the devil. And whether that already happened or that's going to happen in the future, there's going to be generations that experience that. So I just have this sneaking suspicion, when I ran across this picture, the first thing that it invoked to me was, wow, this looks to me like the devil chained up. It just does. So let me come back to get out of my notes here. Come back to StreamYard. Yeah, tortured by God. Exactly. So I'm fascinated by this stuff. I want to do some more study as I get time. Time being the enemy of one privateer Rick. But I'm going to continue to do some study on this and look at it because I'm fascinated. I mean, have you seen the pictures of the? There's a high school in El Paso that is so monumentally big. You could tell it's like an old world structure that they've converted to something else. You can see it. Have you seen that El Paso High School? It's in El Paso, Texas, and there's like a bowl beneath it that they've converted to a football field. It looks like it would have been some kind of amphitheater. Just amazing, amazing stuff out there. I mean, just look around. You hear about Tartarian, mud floods and all these kind of things. And there's people with all kinds of theories about what those are and what happened during that time and when that was and what this nation of Tartaria was. It shows up on maps, old maps. It's crazy. I like to investigate these type of things because I'm just looking for the truth. I just want to know, like, what's the truth? Where are we? I already know who we are. That doesn't change in spite of where we are. I know who I am, and by the way, on that, let me just say this. I have recently experienced people around me being very depressed. And I just want to encourage you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And there is only two choices: serve God or man. And one leads to destruction, and the other one leads to eternal salvation and life everlasting. I don't think there's much of a choice. And especially for people like us, because most of the people who watch this are part of the holy nation of the ecclesia, who are separated people coming out of Babylon and saying, I choose to follow God in his ways and his edicts. So we don't have much of a choice. There's no reason to be depressed about it. Is there evil in the world? Absolutely. Which, by the way, is also one of those things that is unavoidable when you ask yourself, like, the acceleration of deception in the world, is that because there's a different purpose that the devil is operating in? Because when you read the scriptures leading up to what would have been 70 AD and the destruction of the temple, the purpose that the devil had seemed to be focused on Christ, seemed to be focused on him never being, never having the opportunity to be resurrected and become King of Kings. That's the way I'll say it. Because I could have said it in a really controversial way. But that seemed to be the focus of the enemy, was at that time that. But now, post that, what's his focus? It seems like his focus is determined on deception. Because he knows he has no power. He knows his power is gone. He has no authority. He knows his authority is gone. Jesus was made king over heaven and earth. this so-called jurisdiction of his, which is no longer his jurisdiction. So it's an interesting thing. And Robert, I'm glad that you said that. I believe things are cyclical as well. But I also am observant enough to see that there are different focuses. My opinion. I see that there are different focuses throughout the scripture. Not that he's not the same devil killing, stealing, and destroying. Not that he's not the same devil, deception from the beginning, a liar from the beginning. But it just seems to me that the deception is at a over, like a I don't know what word to use. It's overkill. He's like deceiving the world at a rate. And I'll be honest. I mean, I think that when you look at the world the way it is right now, there is a theatrical production being played out in front of people's faces that make it look exactly as if that nation over there called the State of Israel is that Israel, and that there's going to be this event and that event and this event, and you can tie it directly to Revelation. To me, it feels like theater. It feels like, especially if you have this mindset that's behind us, that part of it is behind us, that there's already no temple and that there's no stone on top of another, that already exists, all that stuff. So it's like the narrative has to presuppose that there must be a third temple and that there must be a desecration that happens in that third temple, something of a sacrifice. Although in the 70 AD narrative that was put into the book of Antiquities by Josephus, there was mention of a heifer having a lamb, birthing a lamb in the temple. Strange, but Josephus is usually accounted for as a good witness. So it's strange. All this stuff is strange. But no matter how you look at it or what your eschatology is, at the end of the day, his time is short. Just like Robert said in the chat. His time is short. Not our time, his time. His time is short. We have eternity. New heaven, new earth. But he doesn't. So, anyway, that's all I have for today. That's the note I'm going to leave you guys on. I do want to request prayer for a couple things. Number one, I stabbed myself today at work. It's an interesting little slice there. But anyway, when you're a meat cutter, that happens. It happens. Number two, this TV series that I'm putting together, man, I've bitten off a big piece of elephant. Oh, man, it's a big piece of elephant. It is wonderful that AI videos can be produced very cheaply now. But that means I can make a lot more videos with the credits that I have than I could before. I'm like literally halfway through my credits. And it is the 23rd of July. I have till the 30th to use them up or I lose them. And then it just gets like refilled. So this weekend's going to be a busy weekend of continuing that series. I'm going to be making video after video and maybe creating a lot more characters. Who knows? But at the end of the day, just pray for me because I've got to get that done. I'm committed to it. I'm committed to it because it needs to be done. Media is one of the best ways to communicate with people. It just has become one. It's been one for a while. Hollywood kind of sucked us in on that. Changed a lot of ways that people focus. Our focus has changed over the years. So, as a maker of knives, I get cut all the time. I'm sure that you do. Love you too, Plain Fire. And thank you, Robert. So, like always, I'm just going to end it this way. I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for watching. Do me a favor and hit the like button. And do me a favor and pass this on to somebody who you think might enjoy it. Because I really want to bring in some people to interview on these issues. Other people who have theories and concepts. So with that, blessings to all of you. Remember that everything that we do here at Privateers Volley is all about.
For joining our swashbuckling episode. Come back on the morrow for another load. Please leave a comment for our trouble. Thanks for joining our privateer scobble.